Welcome back to Sun, Sand, and Soul. Josh Tomey, as always, with my co-host David Haber. David, lovely to see you.
Nice to see you.
I feel like we are slowly but surely transitioning into discussion of more and more of what is making Miami new and different. And so much of that difference is driven through real estate, as you and I already know. And so much of that real estate is driven by condominium. I had the good fortune of welcoming to our show Mikael Hamaoui from Riviera Horizons, the developer behind the Pagani Residences in North Bay Village. Mikael, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here.
Absolutely. And I think to lead right off, it would be impossible not to immediately ask you about the genesis of Pagani Residences. For those of us who are fans of automobiles and fans of engineering, Pagani is the upper echelon. In Miami, when a vehicle is still a rarity to see on the street, it means it's really rare. All my friends who
is it more rare than a Bugatti?
Oh, yeah. I think by a long shot.
Yeah,
by a long shot.
As I told Mickey, I'm changing my name from Haber to Haberini because all of these cars, you know, Bugatti, Ferrari, Pagani, it's amazing.
It does not qualify you to drive any of them, by the way, just so you're clear about that.
But, you know, Haberini, I mean, it sounds like a great name.
Sounds Italian. You could probably double your rates as a result.
Right. You know what? I hadn't thought about that, but it elevates you to an elegance and to an exclusivity like Pagani Residences.
Exactly.
And on that awkward transition back to our guest.
Well, all of my transitions are awkward.
Mickey, what was the genesis? I mean, how did this come together? Because at face value, it seems like that's such a reach to bring such a worldwide name like Pagani into this boutique ultra luxury residence. I mean, it makes sense at one level. Another level, how did you make it happen?
Sure. So when you think about Pagani, obviously people think about cars, but you know, Orazio Pagani is also a designer by trade. I mean, it doesn't matter whether he's designing the interior of a private jet or a helicopter, which they've now done. They also launched Pagani Arte, which is effectively their lifestyle brand. So they're now designing couches, coffee tables, credenzas, all that. So they had an entire interior design arm that's already been being developed for the past couple of years that they just recently started to launch.
Didn't I see on his website that he designed a building?
I mean, our building, I guess. But
yeah, it was a cool building that was designed. I presume he designed it.
I guess I don't know which other building other than ours there is. But,
no, like it was like an office or a...
he has an apartment in Milan that is like the Pagani apartment, basically. So the entire interior of that is all, again, Pagani Arte. Right. So again, having that, foundation from the brand, it was a natural segue to then think about doing a branded residence because they had that, again, foundation that we could then leverage. It was kind of a natural progression to go ahead and do that. So when we located a site in North Bay Village, you know, part of the conversation with Chris Pagani, Oracio's son, was that they didn't want to do one of these sort of kind of 300 or 500 or 700 unit buildings. Like that's just not Pagani. Pagani produces about 50 cars a year, 60 cars a year, I think is what they're going to be able to do this year or next. So it's a very, very limited collection.
So you've already exclusively provided for a retention of one for Josh and one for me, right?
Well, solely on the basis of this podcast appearance. I mean, that's the kind of weight that we carry.
All you have to do is purchase the penthouse. We have 2 penthouses, which happens to be perfect because there's 2 of you. And each one of those does come with a Pagani. So
next season, all from Pagani Residences.
I just want to make sure there's a door in between so that we can visit each other, you know, privately.
I think our sponsor budget just went up extraordinarily.
Exactly. So, you know, in talking about doing a boutique residence, which was very much aligned with, I think, the Pagani ethos, it made a lot of sense to do this. And we were able to find a site that also allowed us to create really something that felt Pagani in the sense that every single unit was going to be its own sort of like masterpiece. We weren't going to have kind of, you know, I'm going to say entry-level apartments. You know, a lot of these projects, you know,
what size are the units?
The smallest unit is 2,000 square feet.
Wow.
With an 850 square foot terrace, and it's a 2-bedroom. So this is a massive 2-bedroom.
Is this on the north side or the south side of North Bay Village?
It's on Harbor Island, which has the 2 fingers that are like little peninsula. And so it's at the tip of the West Peninsula.
Wow.
So because of where we sit, we really have 360 waterfront views, which is very unique. And so we were able to design a building that is only corner apartments. So there's just 4 units per floor, and all of them are corners.
And how many is the total number of units?
70 units. So very boutique, very bespoke. So having just corner apartments only already is part of that kind of Pagani DNA, if you will, because we don't have this kind of awkward layout that sits between two units that you're trying to, have sellable square footage come out of.
So is Pagani Arte going to be designing the lobby and some of the common area amenities, or is it going to be a third-party designer?
So we have Pagani Arte is part of the interior design team alongside A++. So
Nice.
A++ is a local, or really they're from Italy, interior designer, and they work with Pagani because Pagani has never designed necessarily an entire building,
Right.
including facade. So we collaborate also with the architect, for example. So Orazio Pagani was very much involved in the design of the facade, but with our architect, Luis Revuelta.
To the extent that you can talk about it, Mickey, what were some of those early conversations with Pagani, whether with Chris or Horacio, like? I mean, was it orienting them to what the Miami development scene looked like, to what the look and feel of a residence that would carry their name would be, or was there already some momentum there that you were capitalizing on?
That's a good question. I think there's like a lot of different facets to, the details that, Pagani got involved in. In the very early days, it was really about conceptualizing a project that was going to be very high end. And part of that was, again, doing these 4-corner apartments, coming up with like 11-foot ceilings. All of the units have 11-foot ceilings, for example, which is normally something reserved for a penthouse.
Right.
Most other projects are 9 feet, and if you're lucky, you're getting 10. To have 11-foot ceilings on your low floor 2-bedroom is very unique. So again, like, you're kind of building the bones, if you will, in the very early days of what is going to be the program of this building, who are we going to attract, and why is our product going to be so superior to any other layout or floor plan or have better view corridors than any other apartment.
Well,
right?
4-corner apartments per floor is one of the ways, and 11-foot ceilings is another way, and big balconies.
Huge balconies, huge.
That's
11-foot,
crazy.
Yeah, 11-foot deep balconies, that fully wrap around. So, I mean, pretty much the smallest balcony you have is 850 square feet. The 4-bedroom has, I want to say, like 1,100 square feet. So, I mean, this is like massive outdoor space. This is not something you see in most projects. I think the few projects where you do see it is maybe 87 Park, which is obviously iconic. Arte also has massive balconies.
Right.
And so those are kind of the buildings that we wanted to compete with in a certain sense, right? And really kind of model ourselves off of and create that sort of iconic building in that location.
What other aspects are creating some brand alignment, again, with capitalizing obviously on the incredible name of Pagani? What are the other aspects of the building that are going to align with that sensibility?
Sure. So, I mean, Pagani, again, a designer by trade, but also doing bespoke, curated, high quality materials at the end of the day is really kind of part of the DNA of the brand. And those are the things that we want to bring over into the building. The concept is not just to be a car building. We're not leaning into the car component of Pagani. We're really leaning into the high quality materials, the bespoke customization that they're known for. And again, the incredible design that they can help deliver.
You're going to have like Italian cabinetry and all the fancy,
exactly,
like fancy Italian marble floors and.
Correct. We've got a lot of flooring options. Like one of the flooring options, for example, is one that's been designed by Orazio. It's actually a chevron flooring that has a metal inlay that kind of alternates on various planks. And so that's the Pagani chevron flooring. So that is like one of their designs, and it is solely available at our building.
So that's got to feel really special just to have his individual input. I mean, talk about a rarity.
Correct. And so, also when you're talking about bringing in Pagani, it's, you don't want to just take the elements that exist necessarily in a car and translate those over into the building. I always try to imagine if we were working with like Burberry, for example, the concept is not to just have Burberry wallpaper all over the place because nobody really wants to live in Burberry world. So the question is, what can you take from the brand DNA?
You wouldn't know that from some of the people that love brands.
That's true. Fair enough. So, here it could be as little of details. To give you an example, we had a design workshop with Orazio maybe about 3 months ago when he was down in Miami to kind of review some of the details of the buildings. And, one of his questions was, what is the door mechanisms? How do the doors open up? And at first you ask yourself, that's like a really random thing to just hyper focus on suddenly. But you realize, coming from Pagani, it's a car brand, the first interaction that a client has with their car is the door system. How
That's
does the door
why I
open?
like the Utopia Roadster, and I want Horacio to send me one.
We'll get you the scale model, no problem.
They lift up. No, they lift up in that really cool way. So I presume the doors are going to be those.
Not quite
Tough
like
to
that.
engineer that.
No, but are they going to be the ones that work on a swivel?
No, they're not going to be on a swivel, but part of it was like the handles, for example. So he wanted to know like what is the feel of the handle, and we had a bunch of different handles that we were looking at that we were playing around with, and he didn't really like any of them because he was like he wanted something that had effectively like that grip almost, that had a better comfort. And then the other question was, how does the door actually close and lock on the latch mechanism, which again is like a very odd detail, it seems like, to obsess over. And one of the feedbacks that he had was that he didn't like the fact that there's a latch mechanism that effectively sticks out of the door when it's just kind of open. You can see that little metal nub. And there I was thinking, I was like, we're not going to reinvent latch mechanisms for doors here.
Right. Apparently you are.
Apparently we are. And fortunately, our interior designer, Paola, had known of a brand, an Italian brand, that does these really cool magnetic locking systems where it's actually a magnet that's kept inside the door. And when you close it, it pops out and it locks. And when you turn the handle, it just releases the magnet. And so you actually have a completely flush door at all times. And the feel is like incredible. It feels much better than like the traditional, if you will, latch mechanisms that we have. And so we have that in every single one of our doors, for example. So that's just like a tiny little detail that, truth be told, like you can't go out and market that. We can't go out there and put that on a fact sheet that we have these latch mechanisms. But there's a lot of these little details that have been driven by the brand and just collaboration with the interior design team and ourselves to find these ideas that differentiate the product.
So from a buyer perspective, Mickey, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about, who some of these buyers are from a marketing standpoint, from saying this is what makes a difference. Obviously, this level of detail, this level of orientation around that Pagani ethos has to be important to them. Curiosity, how many of them to date are actually Pagani owners or have some level of interaction with either the vehicle brand or Pagani Arte? And how much are they really seeking that Pagani engineering? Are they looking at this building really as an extension of that brand?
So first, to answer your question about who are the buyers. So we have actually 4 Pagani owners that have already purchased in the building, not including Horacio himself, which is also going to be in the building and has a unit. So we actually have quite a bit of Pagani owners.
It's got to be the majority of Pagani owners in the area.
Oh, there's about 120, I think, Pagani owners in the U.S., just to give you an idea. But we are expecting several more Pagani owners that are also going to be, acquiring a unit there.
Are most of your prospective owners and your marketing efforts towards Europeans or South Americans? Because I know that Horacio is from originally Argentina, and then obviously moved to Italy. Do you have a focus in marketing on a particular area, or is it mainly U.S. buyers?
Listen, it's a majority U.S. buyers right now, but we do have a good bit of Latin American buyers as well, which is kind of what you expect to see in the Miami market, I think, in general. So there's no surprises there. It's very hard to specifically target Europe because, at that point, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. You're not just looking for somebody who wants to buy at the Pagani Residences. You're looking really for somebody who wants to live in Miami first and foremost. And you're much likelier to find that person if you're targeting in Miami or in New York or in California, some of the usual markets that you'd expect to see.
Are you allowed to say what kind of price point per square foot you're projecting?
Right now our starting prices are around $1,550 a square foot, and it goes up from there.
So back to the earlier question in terms of those buyers then, and that exactitude, if you will, again, that orientation. Do you feel like at the outset that's what they're looking for? Are they immediately identifying that synergy between the brand and what they expect the physical product to deliver?
Absolutely. I can tell you a large majority of our buyers are car aficionados, have very significant car collections, although a large majority of them don't necessarily have Paganis. They might have some, again, incredible cars. And I think immediately when they heard Pagani Residences, they understood that was going to be synonymous with really an incredibly high quality and bespoke product.
Are you going to have specialty garages or closed individual garages for people to put their fancy cars?
Correct. So, we've got a beautiful garage that's in the process of kind of the details are being ironed out, but we're going to have private garages as well that are going to be available for sale. We're also going to have even a Pagani lounge. So on the first floor of the parking, there's going to be a dedicated area that if somebody's bringing their Pagani to the building, that's where it parks. So it's not a spot that's owned by anyone. It's exclusively a spot that's where the Paganis are to be showcased.
Amazing. So I also have to imagine there is a vision for the way the service capability is going to exist for these buyers, that there's the physical product and then there's the service product, and that has to be reflective. How have you thought about tying those two together? What's the process of thinking through how we service somebody who already has extremely high product expectations?
So I think being a boutique residence helps with that. The fact that this isn't a 300 or 400 unit building, we can create that direct relationship with the owners of the building through the servicing and the amenity programming. The Pagani owners are all incredibly close friends with one another, but also with Horacio and the entire family. It really is like a family when you own one of these cars, and you become a part of that circle. And I think in being in a 70-unit building, you can also create that same community where people effectively know each other on first name basis. The doorman has that direct relationship with every person that walks in. And of course, we've got Blackbriar Management to help us make sure that level of service flows through.
So on that note of community, which obviously is clearly already at the heart of what you're conceiving, I would be remiss not to talk about North Bay Village and what's going on in North Bay Village. Clearly, a major renaissance going on.
Termination after termination is going to occur there.
And some new, extraordinarily branded residences, Pagani at the top of that list. How do you see North Bay Village evolving right now? I mean, it seems to me that every time, we open up Real Deal, there is another opportunity in North Bay Village. And I'm sure there's a lot of different ways both the village itself and developers are thinking about cultivating that sense of community there.
Listen, I think North Bay Village is maybe the most interesting area in Miami or in South Florida right now. We all know, if you've been in Miami for a long time, that when an area develops, it can develop incredibly quickly. And North Bay Village has been this diamond in the rough for the past 20 years that really hasn't seen development. But as Miami has grown and become such so many different destination points to go to in Miami, whether it's Bal Harbor, Design District, South Beach, downtown Brickell, North Bay Village now finds itself smack in the middle of it all.
Has great views.
Great views.
Great views south, great views north, great views west.
You're in the middle of Biscayne Bay. And Miami is not just South Beach anymore, right? I mean, when people come to Miami, they don't want to live just in South Beach or in Brickell.
You have Sunny Isles, you have Northeast Dade, you have downtown, you have Brickell, you have the Gables.
Correct. And you want to have access to all of it. And so you really want to live in both Miami Beach and Miami. And one of the best ways to do that is to live literally on the connecting bridge between those two. So it being so centrally located, but at the same time being in this protected little community, this kind of little enclave that isn't necessarily swamped by all the tourism and hotels and restaurants that, some people might be a little bit annoyed with when they're living there. South of 5th Street, there's some beautiful buildings there, but it's not the South of 5th Street from 20 years ago. And so having North Bay Village, I think, kind of be this, first of all, it's its own city. It's got its own mayor, its own police force, its own zoning code. And it's going to be able to maintain that exclusivity that I think is very hard to find in Miami today.
Do you feel like North Bay Village has been receptive to this change? Has it
very?
Okay.
Very. I mean,
increased tax base, baby.
No, I mean, the previous mayor, Brent Latham, really took it upon himself to propel North Bay Village into the future. He spearheaded rezoning all of North Bay Village.
What's the height restriction now?
It depends on where you are. So, where we are in Harbor Island, it's 240 feet, but you do have ways. It's really 150 feet. You can get bonuses to 240. And then we actually worked with the city to craft an ordinance that helped restructure the density program there. And so now there's actually bonuses that we specifically wrote that allows you to go up potentially up to 315 feet.
Wow.
So, but the key is that it's still low density.
How many floors is Pagani Residences?
30 floors. 30 floors, 70 units, 4 units per floor. So again, although we can build a relatively tall building, let's say, you're not able to build a lot of units. And that's really incentivizing larger units for people who want to live in Miami and not the transient nature that you might have found in previous development areas like Brickell, where, high density has been favored and prioritized. North Bay Village is really prioritizing fewer but larger units because they want people who are going to live there.
Let me ask you a question with respect to amenities. Amenities are the big thing for luxury high-rise now, especially, branded residences. What are the amenities that you're envisioning at Pagani Residences?
Sure. So I think probably one of our, I'd say, key amenities is the rooftop pool. Every building has a pool, but very few buildings have rooftop pools in Miami. And here, being in the middle of Biscayne Bay with these 360 waterfront views, we opted for putting a rooftop pool, which is going to have just the most insane views possible. And also, when you talk about amenities, being in a 70-unit building really ensures that those amenities stay primarily private. The odds of you going to the pool deck and having to share that with anything more than 1 or 2 people are probably pretty slim. Our gym after that is on the 29th floor with east-facing ocean views.
Oh my God, that sounds perfect.
So, again, normally the real estate that's associated with the gym is going to be put on a lower floor because the higher floors are much more valuable to sell.
Josh loves to work out. I work out sometimes, so you'll get us one of those key cards for the gym.
That morning sunrise workout facing east.
Exactly. And so
that was not by accident.
No, it wasn't. And so, we prioritized, we took some of this kind of most important real estate that there is in our building, and we decided to make it a common area and make that the gym and the spa. And I think the spa is particularly amazing because, again, that's real estate that normally developers will take the steam room in the sun and they'll put it kind of in a low and dark floor or dark corner
in the
closet somewhere because it doesn't need anything. But in Italy, in the Dolomites specifically, they're very well known for the spas over there, and all their steam rooms and saunas have these spectacular views overlooking the Dolomites kind of
For those that don't know, the Dolomites are the mountains in the north of Italy.
Correct. Exactly. And so over there, the steam room and saunas are like will have spectacular views. And so we decided to put our steam room and sauna, inspired by the Dolomites, on the 29th floors with those same views that the gym has facing east over the ocean.
Are you going to have a concierge or someone to help what I would presume would be very high-end owners to address their needs in the community and where they go to eat and what they do?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we have that full concierge butler service that's there to help, program whatever it is that they need to program, bring packages obviously to their doors, food orders, whatever it might be, reservations at certain restaurants, for example, they'll be able to also book through their Pagani concierge. And again, that's really the hands-on kind of touch points that we want to have with being the Pagani residents.
So it's like white glove service.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
And what has the feedback from buyers been so far? I mean, are they just excited to be part of something that's as new and special and unique?
Very exclusive.
Right. There's obviously this sort of sense of community, sounds a little like community/club, if you will. Have they been clear in their illustration of what their expectations are, or have they just simply been wowed by what you've delivered to date?
I think they've certainly been very impressed with the quality of the product that we've delivered to date, but also one of the things that we offer, again, in a very Pagani fashion, every Pagani car is a unique masterpiece. There's no two Paganis that are alike. Although you might have the Utopia Roadster, each one of those cars is fully customizable. So when a buyer takes one, they can customize, literally the color of the threading to the gearbox, literally everything. And so,
I don't want to ask, but are they more than $1 million?
Oh, they start at 3.5.
You're going to buy me one, right, John?
We will definitely buy you one. The next sponsor coming up is actually going to buy you one.
Okay. Exactly. And so our units actually offer a much higher level of customization than you would find, I think, in any development project in Miami. Generally speaking now, I'd say, 90% of the developments here, it's, one option and that's it. Like, you got no choices. These are the floors, these are the kitchen, and that's what it is. On our end, we took literally the exact opposite approach. We have 3 types of floorings. We have 4 different types of stones for the kitchens. We have 3 different types of cabinets. And if a buyer comes to us and says, hey, I'd really like to reconfigure this or customize that, we're open to work with them because we have 70 units and we can do that. It's very hard to do that if you have 600 units.
Yeah, you can't do that in a monster building.
But with 70, you can do it. So we have Pagani owners that are already working with Horacio and their team on the interior design of their unit to make it different than necessarily kind of what we're showing in our renderings and what we have planned, because we're able to allow that kind of customization.
How many floors of parking do you have?
5 floors of parking.
They're elevated?
Everything's above ground, yeah.
Well, that's probably very important for a Pagani owner.
I was going to say, good start in flood-prone Miami.
Exactly.
Mickey, I'm curious from a marketing perspective. You alluded to earlier, it's a little difficult to market some of this in a traditional way because it's so specific, it's so detail-oriented. How do you approach marketing around this? Because obviously, this is a very distinctive buyer who has very distinctive sets of expectations. Do you find that you just let the brand speak for itself, or have you had to cultivate the marketing in a different way than you would another condo, or even maybe another branded condo?
That's a good question. Marketing is such a multifaceted, I think, kind of, mechanism in a certain way. We obviously strongly lean in terms of the brand DNA and how that's going to influence the designs of the building. And I think people can see those through the renderings. And after that, it's really walking people through what that experience is going to be, what their layouts are going to be like, the fact that they have ensuite elevators that open up directly into their units. When they open up out of that elevator, it's direct views. One of the things that also kind of came up is we hated certain buildings that have these ensuite elevators that open up into your apartment, and then the elevator opens up and there's a wall in front of you. Right. We really want to have something where it's you walk into that unit and
you go, wow.
Space. Exactly. And
you want the wow factor.
Exactly. So I think it's really helping buyers understand what is that experience going to be like? What is this layout and how is it going to feel? How's it going to look? And then obviously explaining the details of materials that are going to be in there. Where are kitchens from? What about the faucets and the fixtures and all these other details, so that they can really understand that there's a level of care, attention, and bespoke customization that's going into this unit that they're just not going to find anywhere else. It just doesn't exist anywhere else.
To me, the unit size and the size of the balconies and the fact that they're all corner units with great views, you open up the door and it's to me, that's the selling point.
You mean the fact that I could fit 3 of my first apartments onto the terrace at a Pagani residence unit? Yes, that's
And
yeah, but
large.
you used to have a townhouse, two stories.
I'm talking earlier than that.
Oh, you're talking when you were young.
When also living up north when space was at a little bit of a premium.
And that's one of the things, when you're designing these buildings, interior design can be changed. People have different tastes. Just because somebody buys at the Pagani Residences, they might have a completely different taste that they want to go ahead and renovate their unit with. And that's okay. But what you can't change are really the bones, that layout that you have, the views that you have, that experience in terms of that elevator going into your apartment, opening up directly into the unit. Those are the bones that are going to stay forever with the building. Buildings that get designed with a bad layout are going to stay as a building with bad layouts.
Are you doing floor to ceiling windows?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, and it's, again, because they're corner units, I mean, the whole building is glazing basically.
That's
so, I mean, you just
fantastic.
have, if you pull up the views and see what those look like from like the unit, I mean, those corner views are just insane.
Do you have a projected construction date and end date?
Yeah, we're actually looking to break ground by end of this year or early next year. And it's about a 2-year build after that. So the project's going to be delivered in about 3 years from now.
Wow.
So I was speaking to another developer in North Bay Village who I won't name right now, but who was so extraordinarily complimentary of the layouts of the Pagani Residences. Basically said you sort of have reset the standards, especially in the area, for those layouts. And obviously a lot of thought went into that. From a development perspective, I also know maybe that means you're not maximizing all of the returns you possibly could for the sake of quality and the sake of those layouts. Was that something that was really met by, again, the standards that you were trying to set with the quality of these? Or was it to say, look, we're going to build boutique ultra luxury. We're going to have all of these trappings and great unit layouts just have to be part of it.
Listen, when we set off on this project in the earlier days, I think the program and the size of the units and the layouts that we were doing, a lot of people would have told us that that's just not going to work in North Bay Village, that nobody had seen units this large and at these price points, and that it was almost like mad. And now the market there has evolved tremendously. And, we'd seen the shift in Miami where people are looking for primary residences. There's only so many single family homes. People want larger units. The past 30 years of Miami development has been designed off of doing as small of units as possible with as many bedrooms as possible, right? And it was very much an investor-centric product that was being built. And now that we have all these people that want to live in Miami and work in Miami, those units don't work for that anymore.
6 months and 1 day in order to benefit from the tax benefits of living in Florida.
Right.
So when we see that kind of shift and we decide to do these larger units, it's what we felt made sense for the general Miami market. It made sense with the Pagani partnership at the end of the day. And so we just went and did it. And, obviously now in hindsight, it obviously was very much the right decision. But I got to admit, at the time of designing this, a lot of people were like, this is insane.
How did you end up, do you know the Pagani family? How did you end up meeting these people?
So funny story, Chris Pagani actually lived in Miami for 3 years, and Pagani moved their America's headquarters from California to Miami about 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So Chris was very familiar with the Miami market. And so when I got connected to them in terms of just exploring different partnership opportunities, Pagani obviously is a brand that I'd known since I was, maybe 12 years old playing Gran Turismo. I knew the Zonda. And
you did?
Yeah.
Really?
So just, from video games. And so I was very, very, curious. I was like,
developer who met through video games.
No, I didn't meet through video games. I knew the car from playing those
okay.
video games. That was my first, I'd say, introduction to the brand Pagani. And in talking with Chris and their team, we realized that obviously, again, they had that foundation to build off of and actually do a branded residence that's not just about being about cars, but about design and quality and, again, that customization.
Well, I was talking to you, Mickey, before the show started about, some of the episodes that we've done, and we've talked about branded residences. I have to imagine some of those early conversations were about avoiding some of the, if you will, the sensibility of other branded residences that may carry other car names, high end or otherwise. And that there's not a lot of connectivity backwards into the brand, whether it's exclusively a car brand or a lifestyle brand. Was that something you went out of your way to avoid, to say we're not just going to be another XYZ tower that has a logo slapped on the side of it? It's got to be meaningful.
I'll tell you, with Horacio and his team, he came down to Miami and we actually toured pretty much every single branded residence that you could think of. We went to all the car branded ones and non-car branded ones. And again, the key takeaway that yes, some of them executed well in terms of having a brand that, actually does live and is expressed in the building, but a large majority of them, did not. And, they felt the bar to do better is actually quite low. And they got very excited by how much impact they could have on this building to really make a great product.
Is there a connectivity, not just with Pagani Arte, but is there a connectivity where if they only make 50 cars a year and you don't own a Pagani, if you buy a residence, do you have an option to get higher on the list?
So again, the penthouses do come, have their own allocation, which is an incredibly rare thing. And not only that, but, those two Paganis are going to be a sort of special edition in the sense that they're being designed by Horacio and they're going to have certain customizations to those cars that are unique to those. After that, obviously, listen, you're living in the Pagani Residences and Horacio is going to be one of your neighbors. So I think in living in that building, if you did have interest in an allocation, obviously the introduction is much easier to make from
It's certainly not going to hurt.
It's 100% going to help. And they're interested. At the end of the day, the brand is very particular about who they let into their family. They're hyper selective. I mean, even if you want to get a Pagani, you can't get on the wait list. It's, 5-year wait list and you need to be approved for it. And, their acceptance rate is, percentages,
Except we have an exemption because you're on the show.
David keeps on. I'm detecting a theme.
We're getting one.
Yes.
And by the way, the residences sound like a bargain compared to 287 square feet within the car. If it's that much for $3.5 million, I'd rather have the residence.
Well, that's exactly kind of part of the story too, is that, a lot of car collectors might love the brand, but owning a $3.5 million car is maybe, aspirational. But here they can actually own the real estate, if you will, that is synonymous and a part of that brand. And that makes sense. A $3.5 million in investment in real estate is very different than a $3.5 million investment in a car.
Agreed.
So from a future and legacy standpoint, Mickey, I can imagine that this is obviously an incredible jumping off point at North Bay Village for your team on development. How do you imagine this begins to set a tone for your future, for Pagani's future? How does this play into the next steps? It's always interesting to think about, therefore, is there a sequel? Is there an orientation to more residences of this ilk for you?
Well, I think, what makes Pagani Residences special is that it is a one-off project. They're not trying to be like a Ritz-Carlton Residences, which can be put in 100 different locations. Pagani is special because it's going to be a one-off. So I don't think we can expect another Pagani Residences anywhere in Florida, truth be told. Does that mean that there might be a Pagani residence in London or Tokyo or Paris? I think that makes a lot of sense. And I know that there's certainly interest in exploring those kinds of ideas. For my firm, in terms of development, we're going to be very much focused on doing these bespoke boutique ultra luxury condo residences in South Florida.
How did you personally get interested in development, get involved in development? What's your background?
Sure. So
let's get a little bit into you.
Fair enough. Well, my original background in work was actually working in investment banking at JP Morgan, doing sales and structuring of exotic derivatives. And so I did the investment banking, route for about 7 years. And then I went down the startup path and started 2 companies with different partners that didn't necessarily actually go anywhere super exciting, but it was an amazing experience of just being an entrepreneur. And then moved to Miami and decided to become a broker. I became a licensed broker focused on residential and commercial sales. And I've been doing that for about 12 years. And, brokerage for me was never necessarily about just doing sales, but really understanding how to acquire deals, how to build value and add value to the things that you do purchase by working with those very sophisticated buyers. And so brokerage ends up being the bait to finding deals in a lot of ways. It teaches you how to negotiate these deals and find them. And so the natural progression was to start acquiring my own set of assets, multifamily, industrial, office, and eventually scaling into development.
Nice.
Amazing. From your perspective, therefore, having gone from brokerage now into development, what's your view of where Miami is right now, where South Florida is right now? Obviously, where the markets, in the aggregate are topsy-turvy. We're seeing some rent comes down. Luxury condos continue to perform probably outside of market expectations. Do you feel like we are in, are we in a continued upward trajectory? Are we in a place where who knows what tomorrow holds?
I think it's a bifurcated market. I don't think there's just kind of a one size fits all analysis on this. I think Miami is obviously in general very hot and a lot of people want to live here, but you're seeing very different dynamics at play with, let's say, construction from the 1970s and 1980s and ultra high end kind of new development construction.
For sure.
And so that's why I say there's really kind of 2 different markets. There's the ultra high end, and then there's a little bit kind of like everything else effectively.
Let me ask you a question with respect to impact of tariffs. Do you think that the impact of President Trump's tariffs are going to affect your importing of Italian goods and materials? Because it's something that I presume you're watching very closely.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people believe, and rightly so, that this tariff is primarily a negotiation strategy and they're not here to stay for the next 3 years. The question is, when are they going to get removed and how long is that going to take? If they don't get removed, then it's certainly going to have an impact, not just on the Italian kind of groups that we work with, importing not just Pagani furniture, for example, but, flooring and fixtures, flooring, everything. But even things like concrete at the end of the day, the materials that go into that, can come from overseas. And so everything can effectively be impacted. So it's certainly something we're keeping an eye on, but I think it's, nobody really knows what the answer is.
And the Pagani car is going to go from 3.5 million to 5 million.
Very possible.
So, there's several, I know Pagani owners that have cars that are meant to be delivered and are currently being held in storage in Modena because, nobody wants to take delivery of them right now because of that. And I assume that's the case with pretty much most cars.
I'm sure.
So in terms
anything with an I for sure.
Yeah.
Ferrari, Pagani, Lamborghini.
Well, we certainly heard about some of the luxury bag retailers who were shipping planes full of bags to the U.S. to beat the tariff deadline. Yeah. On another legislative effort that has had a huge impact on real estate here in South Florida, we know following the tragedy in Surfside and following a very topsy-turvy insurance market, costs of condominium ownership have gone up. It seemingly slowed the high end of the market at this point. But I'm curious from a development perspective, how much of that you're also taking into consideration, saying, listen, we're boutique, we're ultra luxury, we're extremely bespoke, but we also have to keep our eyes and minds fixed on the reality of the way this legislation is impacting just the cost of ownership and maintenance and all those pieces that play into the condo pricing. Yeah,
well, I think actually those legislations have helped new development because it makes us significantly more attractive because nobody really wants to live in these 1980s buildings that haven't been correctly maintained.
And nobody wants to pay $250,000 assessment on a $750,000 unit.
That's exactly right. And so people are looking at new development as actually okay, if I move into this building, I'm not going to have any assessments hit me in the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever it might be because the building is being built to the standards. It's going to be correctly. The reserves are going to be held right from the onset. It's currently budgeted. And so you're not going to have these issues that you have in these older buildings.
What are you looking at in terms of square foot maintenance cost if you've already done the projections?
100% we have. We're at $1.75 a foot.
That's not bad.
It's a boutique building at the end of the day. And so, our amenities are very targeted in kind of being optimized and efficient, but luxurious. And also it's very large units.
And on that note, in terms of optimization and efficiency, obviously you're looking to deliver service at an extremely high standard. Where do you, as a developer, find that balance point between saleability and logical economics and providing people with the service that they're expecting? I mean, where does the red pen have to come out versus where do you feel like, look, if this is the expectation, we're going to deliver at any cost?
I think the buyers of the units aren't necessarily as concerned with the costs. I mean, everyone is somewhat concerned with costs, but I think delivering the right service is more important. So
I can tell you the Pagani owners are not worried about the cost.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, we're not going to cut any corners on kind of services and programming and those kind of high touch points that we need to have in this building. I think those are just mandatory, having that 24/7 valet, having that butler, having that concierge service, the white glove. I mean, these are just going to be expected from these buyers. You just can't cut those out to save a couple cents.
Well, and for these buyers, as you've engaged with them, as your sales team has engaged with them, do you find, in addition to the attraction to the brand itself, that there is a specific attraction to North Bay Village in juxtaposition to Brickell, in juxtaposition to Sunny Isles or the beach itself? I mean, obviously earlier you talked about the fact it's this great middle point. You've got access to all of it. Is that a driving factor for them in choosing this?
Again, I think the conversation on North Bay Village has changed a lot over the past 12 months. 12 months, we really had to explain to, I'd say, brokers and buyers, like what North Bay Village is going to become and kind of help them understand that vision. Now that vision is already becoming reality. So it's become much easier for people to see what North Bay Village is becoming. While before it was just kind of more of a concept and idea. I think our buyers very much do appreciate, at least a lot of them, having that more secluded private area to be able to live in without still being close to all the things that they might want to enjoy in Miami, but not having to like live in those highly trafficked, overly touristy areas. And that is very much a selling point for us. It very much allows us to differentiate from living in Edgewater or in Brickell or in South of Fifth Street.
Do you see other equivalents in the South Florida market to North Bay Village, areas that have sort of more of a legacy village sensibility that are in transition?
Bay Harbor, I think, is, and
they're doing the same thing.
And they're doing the same thing. It's gone through a tremendous amount of development.
Although not as high end as Pagani.
Not as high end.
But the same kind of great north views, west views, same thing.
Correct. You just can't build very high up over there. So it's like, I think all like 8-story or 12-story buildings. I think a lot of the architecture of the buildings there, because of city code, everything looks a little bit similar. It was a little bit maybe harder to, create a product that differentiated itself. But yeah, I think Bay Harbor is probably, 5 years ahead, maybe 3 years ahead of North Bay Village at this stage, in just terms of like the amount of development that's taken place there.
Now, let me ask you a question from the perspective of me as a boater, fisherman. Do you guys have a marina? Will you have a marina? That, you want to talk about attraction, you're on the water. What's the plan?
Yeah, so we're going to have boat slips. We're probably gonna have 2 or 3 boat slips, which is not a ton necessarily, but those will be held for the building. But fortunately, there's a 120 slip marina that's literally right across from us, and you can actually get on the wait list over there. It's Miami-Dade Run Marina. And
I forgot about that. It's right in the middle of the causeway.
It's a 2-year wait list to get on that wait list to get a slip. And so our building is going to be delivered in 3 years. So it'd be very easy, and we're going to have probably I'd say a houseboat or something to be able to kind of take somebody from the Pagani Residences boat slip to the marina.
Nice. Any way to avoid the Miami traffic.
Exactly.
Mickey, it's been wonderful to have you on the show, and great to hear about Pagani Residences. We can't wait to see it go up.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. You're listening to Sun, Sand, and Sold. I'm Josh Tomey with David Haber. We'll be right back.